This is the decisive point, Colonel. We must commit the reserves now.
Absolutely not. I will not sacrifice the division on your hunch.
The situation is firmly under control, thanks to the coordinated efforts of the British Corps.
This is unacceptable, Field Marshal. Our lines are breaking.
World War II is remembered as a story of unity. A clean, heroic narrative where the Allies stood shoulder to shoulder, bound by brotherhood, marching together toward victory. It's a comforting version of history, and it's incomplete. Because in January 1945, with Nazi Germany on the brink of defeat, the greatest threat to Allied victory did not come from Berlin. It came from inside the alliance itself. Behind closed doors in Europe, tensions had reached a breaking point. Trust was eroding, egos were colliding, patience long stretched for the sake of unity was finally gone. At the center of it all was a single decision that would never appear in an official battle report. A decision that could have ended careers, fractured governments, and changed the shape of the post-war world. The Supreme Allied Commander was facing an impossible choice. For months, he had done what coalition leaders are expected to do: absorb criticism, smooth over disputes, and protect unity at any cost. He had allowed slights to pass. He had accepted public embarrassment. He had tolerated behavior that, in any other command structure, would have ended in dismissal. But now the consequences were no longer abstract. Senior commanders were threatening to walk away. Political leaders were losing confidence. Newspapers were questioning whether this alliance could survive its own success. And somewhere beyond the front lines, the enemy was watching, fully aware that a divided coalition is a vulnerable one. No longer about tactics or strategy, it was about authority. It's about whether leadership in a coalition means endless compromise, or knowing when compromise becomes weakness. What happened next was not a battle. There were no tanks, no gunfire, no explosions. Just a room. 2 men. And words sharp enough to end a career. Because at some point, every leader faces the same moment. The moment when patience runs out, when diplomacy fails, when authority must be asserted, no matter the cost. And in January 1945, that moment finally arrived. It is one of the darkest secrets of World War II. We are taught that the Allied victory was inevitable, a band of brothers fighting united against Nazi tyranny. But in January 1945, with the war nearly won, that brotherhood was on the verge of a catastrophic collapse. Inside a cold, smoke-filled headquarters in Versailles, the Supreme Allied Commander, Dwight D. Eisenhower, sat staring at a piece of paper. It wasn't a battle plan. It wasn't a surrender order for the Germans. It was a draft letter to the combined chiefs of staff in Washington and London. The letter contained a demand that would shake the foundations of history. Eisenhower was demanding the immediate firing of Britain's greatest war hero, Field Marshal Bernard Law Montgomery. The tension was absolute. American generals were threatening to resign. British commanders were panicking. The Nazis were watching, hoping the alliance would tear itself apart. This is the story of the moment the nice guy stopped being nice. The moment diplomacy died, and the most powerful general in history delivered a brutal ultimatum. Shut up, fall in line, or get out. To understand the explosive magnitude of this meeting, we must first understand the 2 men who walked into it. They were, in every conceivable way, oil and water. Dwight Eisenhower, Ike, was the quintessential American pragmatist. Born in Texas, raised in Kansas, he was a master of logistics and diplomacy. Wasn't the greatest battlefield tactician in history, and he knew it. His genius lay in managing egos, in keeping a massive multinational coalition moving in the same direction. He smoked 4 packs of cigarettes a day, drank coffee by the gallon, and possessed a smile that could disarm his fiercest critics. He believed in teamwork above all else. Bernard Law Montgomery, Monty, was his polar opposite. The son of a bishop, Monty didn't smoke, didn't drink, and didn't care who he offended. He was a brilliant, meticulous tactician who had defeated Rommel at El Alamein, saving North Africa for the British Empire. But he was also deeply insecure, staggeringly arrogant, and utterly convinced of his own infallibility. He believed that warfare was a science, and that he was its greatest professor. To Monty, Eisenhower was a nice chap, but an amateur soldier, a corporate chairman playing at war. Since the invasion of Sicily in 1943, Monty had treated Eisenhower with thinly veiled condescension, but Eisenhower had tolerated it. He had swallowed his pride for the sake of the alliance. He let Monty take the credit. He let Monty grab the headlines. But by the winter of 1944, Eisenhower's patience was running on fumes. The friction wasn't just personal, it was strategic. After the success of D-Day, a bitter debate raged over how to finish off Nazi Germany. Montgomery demanded a single thrust. He wanted Eisenhower to give him and only him all the fuel, all the ammo, and all the best American divisions. He proposed a lightning strike across the plains of northern Germany, straight to Berlin. "Give me the tools," Monty argued, "and I will end the war by Christmas." It was a bold plan, but it required halting General Patton's army in the south and relegating the Americans to a supporting role. Eisenhower disagreed. He favored a broad front strategy, advancing across the entire line to grind the Wehrmacht down. He argued that a single thrust was too risky. If Monty got cut off, the war could be lost. This strategic disagreement turned toxic in September 1944. Eisenhower allowed Monty to try a version of his plan, Operation Market Garden. It was a disaster. The British 1st Airborne was destroyed at Arnhem. The bridge was a bridge too far. You would think this failure would humble Montgomery. It did the opposite. He blamed Eisenhower for not supporting him enough. He blamed the weather. He blamed the Poles. He blamed everyone but himself. And as winter set in, Monty began a whispering campaign in London, telling Winston Churchill that the war was dragging on because Eisenhower didn't know how to fight it. Then came December 16, 1944. The Battle of the Bulge. Hitler launched a massive, desperate surprise attack through the Ardennes forest, shattering the American lines. Chaos reigned. Whether grounded the Allied Air Force, American units were surrounded. In this moment of crisis, Eisenhower made a difficult, pragmatic decision. The German advance had split the Allied front in two. Eisenhower's communication with the Northern American armies, the 1st and the 9th, was cut off. Swallowing his pride, Eisenhower transferred temporary command of these two American armies to Field Marshal Montgomery. It was a military necessity, but for American generals like Omar Bradley, it was a humiliation. To his credit, Montgomery acted swiftly. He tidied up the lines. He brought order to the chaos. He placed British reserves in key blocking positions. Tactically, he performed well, but personally, he was a disaster. When Monty arrived at the American headquarters to take command, he strode in like a savior descending from the heavens. He refused to look at the American generals. He criticized their dispositions. One American officer later said, "He treated us like naughty schoolchildren who had made a mess that he now had to clean up." The situation was tense, but it might have been manageable if Montgomery had just kept his mouth shut. He didn't. On January 7, 1945, with the Battle of the Bulge largely won, Montgomery called a press conference. What he said there would ignite a firestorm. Standing before the world's press, Monty essentially claimed that he alone had saved the Allies from disaster. He described the battle as one of the most tricky he had ever handled. He implied that the Americans were fleeing in panic until he arrived. He barely mentioned the heroic stand of the 101st Airborne at Bastogne, or the grueling counterattack by Patton's Third Army. He said, "When I saw what was happening, I took certain steps to ensure that if the Germans got to the Meuse, they would certainly not get over that river." The implication was clear. I saved the Americans from their own incompetence. The reaction was nuclear. General Omar Bradley, usually a calm man, turned purple with rage. He told Eisenhower, "I will never serve under that man again. If he stays, I go." General George Patton was even more blunt. He reportedly told his staff, "If Ike doesn't fire him, I'll challenge the little bastard to a duel and shoot him myself." But the most dangerous reaction came from Washington. General George Marshall, the chief of staff of the U.S. Army and the man who controlled the entire American war effort, sent a telegram to Eisenhower. The message was short and cold. No American soldier will ever serve under Montgomery again. You have to choose. It's him or us. Eisenhower realized diplomacy was dead. The alliance was effectively broken. He sat down and wrote a letter to the combined chiefs of staff. In it, he laid out the situation plainly. The differences between him and Montgomery were irreconcilable. He requested that either he, Eisenhower, or Montgomery be relieved of command immediately. It was an ultimatum. Eisenhower knew they couldn't fire him. He commanded 3 million men, and the U.S. was providing 75% of the troops and supplies. By offering his own resignation, he was forcing Churchill to fire Monty. This is where the story takes a dramatic turn. Before sending the letter, Eisenhower showed it to his Deputy Supreme Commander, Air Chief Marshal Tedder. Tedder said, "Send it." But then, Major General Freddie de Gingand entered the room. De Gingand was Montgomery's chief of staff. He was the only man who could manage Monty. The only man Monty truly trusted. He was the buffer between Monty's ego and reality. When de Gingand saw the letter, he turned pale. He knew this was the end. If this letter went out, Montgomery was finished, and Anglo-American relations would be poisoned for a generation. De Gingand begged Eisenhower, "Give me 24 hours. Don't send the letter yet. Let me fly to see Monty. If I can't make him understand, then send it." Eisenhower, still hoping to avoid a public scandal, agreed. "You have 24 hours, Freddie. Not a minute more." De Gingand flew through a snowstorm to reach Montgomery's tactical headquarters in Belgium. When he arrived, Monty was in high spirits, completely oblivious to the hurricane he had created. He thought the press conference had gone rather well. De Gingand didn't waste time. He walked into Monty's caravan and laid it out. "Sir, you're about to be fired." Montgomery laughed. "Fired? Who's going to fire me, Ike? He wouldn't dare. Churchill won't let him." De Gingand looked him in the eye. "Sir, you don't understand. Eisenhower has drafted a letter to the combined chiefs. Marshall supports him. Bradley supports him. Patton supports him, and I have just spoken to London. Churchill supports him too." The smile vanished from Montgomery's face. "Winston?" "Yes, sir. The Prime Minister feels you have gone too far. If Eisenhower demands your head, Churchill will give it to him. The Americans are the dominant partner now. We need them more than they need us." For the first time in the war, Montgomery looked genuinely frightened. His bubble of invincibility had popped. He realized he was isolated. The tactical genius was about to be destroyed by his own political stupidity. "What do I do, Freddie?" he asked. "You have to sign this," de Gingand said, producing a draft apology letter he had written on the plane. "And you have to mean it. And then you have to go see Eisenhower and take whatever he gives you." This leads us to the meeting, the moment of truth. Mid-January 1945, Montgomery's car pulls up to Eisenhower's headquarters. But this is not the swaggering hero of El Alamein. This is a man walking to his own execution. Eisenhower did not meet him with a smile. He didn't offer him a cigarette. He stood behind his desk, flanked by his chief of staff, Bedell Smith. The air in the room was freezing. Eisenhower began speaking, and his voice was low and hard. "Monty, I think you know why you're here." Montgomery tried to stammer an explanation about the press conference, about being misquoted. Eisenhower cut him off with a wave of his hand. "I don't care about the press, Monty. I care about the fact that my American general's men who have bled for this alliance are threatening to resign because of you. I care that you have consistently undermined my authority since Italy." Then Eisenhower delivered the ultimatum. "It wasn't a debate. It was a dictate. You seem to forget that I am the Supreme Commander. Not you. I have tried to accommodate you. I have given you command of American armies. I have supported your plans. And in return, you have insulted my staff and questioned my competence." Eisenhower leaned forward, his hands flat on the desk. "Let me be clear. The war is ending. The Germans are beaten. We are going into Germany, and we are going to do it my way. You will coordinate with Bradley as an equal, not a superior. You will stop lobbying London. Will stop the press leaks." And then came the line that echoed through history. "You will do exactly as I say, or you will pack your bags and go home. I will relieve you of command, and I will do it today. Do you understand me?" The silence in the room was deafening. Montgomery looked at Eisenhower. He looked at the map on the wall, realized that the dynamic had shifted forever. The British Empire was exhausted. America was the Titan now. Montgomery swallowed his pride. He looked down. "I understand, Ike. You have my full support." To ensure there was no ambiguity, Eisenhower demanded the apology in writing. The letter Montgomery sent, the one drafted by Dagan Gandhis, a masterpiece of submission from a man who had never submitted to anyone. It read, "Dear Ike, I am distressed that my press conference has caused you such trouble. I would like to say that I am absolutely devoted to you and will do everything I can to help you win this war. You can rely on me to go all out 100% to carry out your orders. Your very devoted subordinate, Monty. Your very devoted subordinate." Those 4 words ended the conflict. Eisenhower read the letter, exhaled a cloud of smoke, and filed it away. He kept the draft of the firing letter in his desk, just in case. The consequences of this showdown were profound. Montgomery was effectively sidelined for the rest of the strategic war. When the time came to cross the Rhine River, Eisenhower gave the glory to the Americans. The U.S. First Army captured the bridge at Remagen. Patton crossed the Rhine and pissed into the river literally, just to spite Monty. When the plans were drawn up for the final drive, Montgomery wanted to race for Berlin. He wanted the glory of capturing Hitler's capital. Eisenhower said no. He ordered the armies to halt at the Elbe River, letting the Soviets take Berlin. Montgomery was furious, but he said nothing. He had learned his lesson, followed orders. This confrontation marked the definitive transfer of global power. For 2 centuries, Britain had been the world's dominant superpower. But in that room in Versailles, the torch was passed. Eisenhower, representing the industrial and military might of the United States, asserted dominance. Britain, exhausted and bankrupt, had to accept the role of junior partner. Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery remained a hero to the British people, and rightfully so. He was a brilliant soldier who served his country with distinction, but his ego nearly destroyed the alliance that saved the world. Dwight Eisenhower proved that day that leadership is not just about moving pins on a map. It's about knowing when to compromise and knowing when to kill the compromise. He saved the alliance by being willing to break it. He showed that in the high-stakes poker game of war. You have to be willing to push all your chips into the center of the table. Eisenhower's confrontation with Monty wasn't just a workplace dispute. It was the moment the modern world order was born. The nice guy from Kansas proved he had teeth of steel. And because he did, the Allies marched into Germany united, not divided. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden conflicts of World War II, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel. What do you think? Should Eisenhower have fired Monty earlier, or was he right to wait? Let us know in the comments below. And for more untold stories from the front lines of history, subscribe to World War Stories and ring the bell so you never miss a documentary. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.